Giles Fox. What are you looking for? What's this one?
Okay, guys, so we're live on the social, so it's over to you. Pass over to you guys, yeah?
Just give us a second.
Yeah, cool. Once again, guys, welcome. This is the community music recharge produced the masterclasses that we're going to be doing every month. Next month, we've got a guy called Urban Dub coming in. He's a drum and bass. So that will be good. And we'll be letting you know about the dates of when that will be. But yeah, welcome to the session. Obviously, today we've got the HeavyTrackerz.
Back on. Yeah, we should be good. Put it back on there. So hi guys, can everyone see us?
Yeah.
Perfect. Just give us a second.
You can watch all this without ads breaking your phone.
Right, that's the beauty of
coming through your speakers rather than.
Yeah, no, we're good now. Yeah, that's the beauty of being on Zoom and doing it all remote. So we've worked with Antonio and the guys before on various talks and various conversations and so on, and kind of showcased some of our music, some of our productions. This is obviously the first time we're doing it via Zoom, so bear with us, and it's probably going to mess up at some point. There might be something wrong, but again, we do what we must. So just to kind of give you a quick presentation on that. So we're the HeavyTrackerz. This is Tank, and I'm Teddy. We are music producers. We've been producing for a good, I think, over 10 years now. We had our big break back in 2015 or 16 with a track called German Whip by an artist called Meridian Dan. We've had other successes as well. We've worked with the likes of, I can't even think, Stormzy, and so many more. I actually can't think of.
Off the list is Stormzy, the whole lot, Wiley.
Who else?
There's so many. There is so many off the list.
So we've worked with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
We've worked with a bunch of people, mainly I would say mainly urban. So anything from R&B, hip hop, grime, garage. We've pretty much done it. We've actually released our second album a few months back. So we were on our sophomore album, and we've had tons and tons of awards and plaques and so on and so forth. So that, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Today we thought we'll sit with you guys and kind of take you through one of our production beats that we did on Logic, mainly through mixing, mastering, recording, giving you a little bit of a background on the track. We're pretty hands-on on a lot of things that we do, so we also have shot a video for it, curated, screenplayed it, and yeah, that track is on our album. It's a track called 500 Likes. It features a few artists, Koji Radical, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, Sculpture, and the singer on it is a guy called Lazy from the group BBK, which has Jamie and Skepta in it. So yeah, so I think maybe, Antonio, would it be good if we kind of run the track first, or at least half of it, so everyone can kind of check it out, and then we can dissect it all?
I think you're only sharing audio from Logic, so I can play it. I've got it here on my computer, so I can play it.
Ideally, yeah, if that works, yeah. So while we set up, yeah.
Can you guys hear that?
Buffering, innit?
On your side, on our side.
Nah, we didn't play it. He's playing it. Hello, can anyone hear us? You can, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of the buffering, I think the music stopped for a minute. But yeah,
So we're good.
we're
We
good.
can't
We're
hear
good.
the music.
Oh, Antonio.
And audio.
They can't hear the music.
Oh no, can you not?
Yeah, no, we can.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Cool.
It's alright. It's alright. No problem. I'll just play it from here.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so just to begin with, obviously, this is a project of the song. As you can see, can anyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you all see the Logic files that you were sharing?
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Okay,
Alright.
perfect.
Usually, obviously, because where it's all in house, so obviously we record, we make, obviously produce, record, and mix at the same time, engineer it. So the whole album has been engineered by us, mixed and mastered by us. But yeah, this is one of the processes that we usually do in general. Like, usually we would have like a set out of just a basic way of recording. So we'd have a template. We'd have a template usually in terms of that. So our template is usually just with just a little bit of EQ. That's just whatever we have. So usually on the vocal, I just basically roll off like almost up to about 50k of the vocal just to take out with the bass or all the end low end.
Would that be
voices.
for any vocals?
Yeah, any
all of them.
vocals.
So choruses, verses, and so on.
Yeah, just in case, obviously, in terms of like some may not have like preamps basically. So what we do, that we run our mic through a preamp before it goes into Logic basically. So what would happen is, like, I don't have to do much, but some people, because they don't have the gear, so they have to really EQ it out. But we don't usually have to because of the settings that we already have on our preamp basically. So
Guys, I'm assuming here that everyone's familiar with Logic X. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
okay.
Cool.
Kind of.
Perfect. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get Tank to kind of run through first of all some of the plugins and some of the extra stuff that we use just on the side. If you can kind of run through plugins and extra tools that we use, and then we'll dissect it one by one, and I'll ask you why. So I'll play the part of you guys. I'll ask Tank some questions to make it kind of easy for everyone. Does that work?
Yeah, cool.
Right. So in terms of plugins, it's a mixture of Waves, Fab Filter, and Isotope. So usually I'm really a fan of Fab Filter's VSTs. So in terms of that, the EQ is really good because you've got the freedom of cutting certain frequencies really good and very accurately. So like in terms of my vocals, I always basically have, in terms of recording anyway, all the EQs that I have, this was the best one that's suitable for my mic basically. So
yeah, so depending on the mic that you use, depending on what you have available for you, Fab Filter would be our go-to in terms of EQ. So we would definitely recommend that. Is there anything else you recommend in terms of vocals?
Yeah, I mean, just obviously everyone uses compression, but yeah, in terms of that, it varies. You can use any sort of compression you want, but it's just how you would make it sound. You want it to sound like. Usually, I like my vocals to be warm as possible, so I'll use several compressors. The CLA 3A is one of them. that I use sometimes, but it varies on the vocal. It depends on what song it is as well, like how I'll compress it basically.
So bearing in mind that a grime song might be different in terms of vocals to a drum and bass song, to an R&B track, or to a rap track. So you would obviously be aware of that and make sure you use the right compressor and so on.
Yeah. And then a bit of compression, a bit of EQ, maybe add some, because obviously for those of you who record at home or have just a normal home studio, Waves is really good with some sort of gate or noise cancellation kind of thing. You can always apply it to your vocal before you even compress it, because I think that's best to do that, because it shuts obviously all the background noise that you have on your vocals. So I do apply some of that on my vocals as well. Although I've got like a preamp that does it by itself already, but I just make sure that I get a clean sound out of it.
What would be the best in terms of reverb that you, especially for the singers, to make their vocal sound fat, loud, and almost dreamy? What are the type of reverb do we use?
I usually, I think the actual Logic Reverb Space Designer is really good, so I use that, to be fair. But I may use on certain songs, I may use another vocal reverb that's on Waves. I forgot the actual name for it, but
so you guys can kind of see how many plugins we've got going on here.
So I think it's either, because obviously on my other template, that's what it's usually, but it's either one of the two. So I mainly use Space Designer because it's really good. Like, you've got a lot of control that you can actually, however you want it basically. But it's really good in terms of reverb. But yeah, but in terms of methods of mixing, usually all the channels that I have are always sent to the bus. So, i.e., for example, this is probably the main vocal or so it's on bus 1. So if I was to go on bus 1, it has several compressors that I use to make my vocal sound warm. So, for example, I'll start off with a H compressor just to tighten up the vocals a bit more, and then I'll add another R compressor just to make it to keep it contained, basically, instead of having the vocals loud.
Can we play them? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna try and play you guys the chorus on its own, the main part of the chorus. We're gonna mute everything, play the chorus, strip it bare, and then little by little add some of these plugins to kind of show you the difference from I guess a flat vocal that has pretty much nothing to all the instruments that and plugins that we've added to it.
Lord, if I feel how I feel for me, shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real for me. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live.
Right. So that's just the vocals that I
Lord, if I feel how
with all the effects on. So if I were to take them off, so I'll just.
By the way, can you guys hear the vocals, right?
Yeah, sounded clean. Nice one.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna try and take everything off so you can kind of hear it. Probably Lazy probably wouldn't really be happy if we did that, but we're gonna show you what it sounds like without anything on it.
Lord, if I feel how I feel for me, shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real for me. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live for me. Told the label 50-50 or no deal for me. Break the law if I feel.
Yeah, nah, these are the vocals raw.
Yeah, and actually, before you play it with the stuff on, I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on Lazy. So he's actually a grime MC. So singing is actually secondary to him. So he's actually a rapper, and he really wanted to sing on the track. So again, if you guys are naturally singers, for example, it would come a lot more easier to you. So with these vocals, we had to treat them, we had to give it a little bit more of a juice and make it sound a little bit more extra, so it sounds perfect, basically. But I guess one of the advice that I wanted to say, if you do sing or if you're not necessarily a singer, some of these plugins, some of these tools can allow you to better your vocals. So one of my advice here, basically what I'm trying to say is, don't give up even if you're not the best singer.
Right. So in terms of how the vocals sound with effects, to save so much CPs, here's a tip for you. I don't really, because I've seen a lot of projects where there's a lot of VSTs on the main channels, and sometimes you can save yourself some memory whilst working. So usually I would use a bus to send everything to another place. So I'll send, like for example, the main vocal, I would send it to another bus. So where all the bus would have the main things that I use, basically. So, for example, for the main vocal, here's compressors, CLA vocals, and auto tunes for obviously Lazy's vocal. So that's what I would then bust to.
So ideally, when you're recording on a track, whatever track that you're opening, you don't necessarily have to put all your plugins on that particular track. Yeah. If you send those tracks to a bus that has all your favorite plugins and so on, it does save CPU and memory. I guess that's what you're pretty much telling them. So it depends, if you're recording from home, not every single track that you're recording has to have compressors and plugins on each one of them. You can send them all to a particular bus, to a particular section that you've chosen, and it has everything that you need on there. So that way it does save you some memory. So we're gonna try and play you his vocals, which are now basically treated.
If I feel how I feel, shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live. Told the label 50-50 or no deal. Break the law.
Yeah. So in terms of like vocals to be treated, especially on this record, Lazy's vocals, obviously we had to add some auto tunes on that. But obviously it wouldn't show exactly what that auto tune is, because obviously I've just it's an old one working from it, but from another machine you'll be able to see it. But with this particular record, I use auto tune effects where I find it really quick to slap on rather than tweaking with the actual auto tune, the main auto tune one, VST, which is which is Evo. So this one, I think it was quite quick and easy for me to actually use, basically. So for this record, for just mainly playing, it wasn't detailed in terms of going into every single note and showing and trying to tune Lazy's vocal, because Lazy already, as a singer, he knows how to hit the notes anyway. So that was fine for me to actually use EFX.
One of the advices that I would personally give when it comes to auto tune, and I guess I'm talking to singers in this particular section here. The less, the better. Unless you're trying to sound like R2D2. Yeah, the less the better. But there are ways that you can use pitch correct and auto tune to make your vocals sound crisp without having to sound like a Dalek from Doctor Who. So learn how to use it, learn how to treat it. It can be a very useful tool. I know some people are not very big fans of auto tune, but if used the correct way, it can be useful. So yeah, we'll definitely advocate for that. So far, is there any questions so far in terms of recording and vocals?
Someone did ask a while ago about microphone. What microphones do you guys use for vocals?
It'll be Newman TLM 103 or 104. That's what it is.
What other microphones would you? So let's just break it down in two places here. In terms of microphones, are we? And I'm assuming we're not all filthy rich, so therefore we're not going to spend £5,000 on a mic here. What are some of the cheap alternatives you would recommend to people to use?
Just to be fair, it's not so much a mic. A good mic, you can get a decent mic for like £200 or whatever, but it's just what you have with it. Usually people neglect like the preamps that comes with it. Like for example, I have a compressor and a gate / like a preamp that goes with it. So that's what's more essential rather than a £2,000 mic or whatever. But there is some new mics out there which I think there's one mic in particular that's really good, but I'm not too sure how much it is. But that one replicates every mic on the world basically. Yeah. So it's made by Digital Slate or Digital State, I think. But that's a really good mic. But you don't really need, I say, like a super mic. Really. Yeah, it's just your preamps.
It's more about the preamp that goes with the mic. Any decent mic, like for example, I think Billy here said that you can use the Editor Keys SL300 for £60 as a mic. Again, if that mic works and you have a decent preamp, then happy days. You know, it's not necessarily.
And also as well, if you know what you're doing, as well, if you know exactly what you're doing in terms of compression, in terms of EQing, then you're good to go.
Okay, so Antix asks, what do you mean a preamp that goes with the mic? Could you explain what a preamp would do or how it works?
A preamp usually are used like, say for example, like mainly podcasts, you would hear that a lot, but preamps comes in all different shapes.
We wish we could disconnect ours to show you guys, but unfortunately we can't.
Right. So preamps like
okay, one sec. Antonio, is there any chance you could I can give you the name of our preamp that we use and you can Google it and maybe drop it in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
For anyone to click on the link. So Antonio, we use you actually know it. DBX.
Yeah, DBX
286S.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's about. I think they cost about £200. I think they are.
Yeah, cool. So if you drop that link in the group chat, that'd be nice. So anyone that wants to know the type of preamp we use, or you know what's a good preamp to connect to a microphone, so that the vocals just sound a lot better, basically.
Ideally, you would need a preamp that would have a compressor on it, a gate, like a noise gate, and an EQ on there. So if he has all these three, then you're set to go. You wouldn't have to do much in terms of mixing or like digging into the vocals and making it sound the best as you could.
Yeah.
Because what happens is if you get a bad recording without a preamp, you'll find yourself having to do a lot more. Yeah. So if you have like a preamp, it saves you time in terms of going into the vocal and spending hours on a vocal, whilst you can just have a preamp that does it all in your own settings.
Yeah, they're just, it's like all of this stuff are just little things that make your job a lot more easier. You know, sometimes, especially with the studios, a lot of people think that, you know, you need to record inside a booth that's extremely padded and so on and so forth. Sometimes we have artists that do come here and they don't want to get into the box and they rather record outside, they rather record right here. And that is, we can enable that because we have a decent preamp that allows us to pick up good recordings. You know, it would have been a lot tougher, you know, if we didn't have one. Billy's asked, what ideal volume should you have your vocals at?
Vocal wise, whilst recording? If it's whilst recording, you would have make sure it doesn't peak to the yellow. So I would say just under, probably about under 16 or 24, like minus 24 at least. So it doesn't peak at all. So that way you can be able to have some headroom to actually work with, rather than just recording it too loud. Like if you record it too loud, then you're just finding yourself having to re-record it again, basically. So
yeah,
just make sure it doesn't peak. It doesn't peak to the yellow, basically.
So Aaron said, what are the advantages of having an external preamp compared to an inbuilt audio interface?
External, you can do a lot, to be fair, with an external, to be fair. But the built-in interface, as in...
It's already part of the logic.
Yeah, the only thing is with the built-in, there's only so much you can do in terms of, like, especially with quality as well. You can't go change the sample rates to a higher sample rate. You can't do, like, certain things like that, or you can't, like bounce at a certain bit rate. Do you know what I mean? So all these things that an internal preamp doesn't. I think it's always better to have a sound card, basically, an external sound card, because all these options that you have whilst recording and mixing, an external sound card can take you to another level and better sound quality as well.
Cool. So the next step, what I wanted to do, I wanted to touch on the actual process of recording. So for example, I wanted to concentrate on Lazy's vocals before we get into the verses, the lyrics, the rap. I wanted to concentrate on the singing and talk about some of the tools and ideas that we use when it comes to recording people in terms of layers, for example. That's a big thing, and I just kind of want to take a minute for the singers. One thing that we do in terms of choruses, right? We try not to have a ridiculous amount of stacks in terms of the vocals that we're putting out there. We try to keep it as plain as possible. I think a perfect example for it would be an artist like Drake, who doesn't use a lot of layers and stacks of vocals. You've got to keep it clean. People have to be able to hear what you're saying. It has to sit nicely on the track. So with Lazy, I think we have one main take, although you can see a lot of layers there, but we do have one main take, and we have some ad-libs, and we have some in-betweens, and we have some BV, some backing vocals that goes with it.
Lord, if I feel how I feel, shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live. Told the label 50-50 or no deal. Break the law if I feel how I feel. Shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real.
So it's got the main there, and the main is literally one, right? Then he has his yeah that kind of go underneath it. A lot of people would either triple or double the main.
Yeah.
We tend to advocate against that, just because, first of all, I guess it's the journey that music has taken nowadays. This is not the late 90s. This is not Mariah Carey kind of stacks and stacks and stacks. You have to kind of keep it like simple as possible, so it just sounds nice and it doesn't sound as if you've got a million people doing it. And at the same time, he's got his backing vocals, and you can hear the yeahs. Tank will play it, and we're just gonna play everything else that's underneath it, but it's still the same artist, and some of it is pan to each speaker. There's a few things that are panned, so that everything has room to breathe.
Lord, if I feel how I feel, shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live. Told the label 50-50 or no deal. Break the law if I feel how I feel. Shoot my shot. If she's with it, then it's real. 500 likes on the gram, that's how they live. Told the label 50-50 or no deal. Me and my brethren trying to law.
So what you can hear there, although there's like plenty of stacks and plenty of things going on in the background, I just want you guys to take what you guys need to take away from this is that his main is basically one track, and I would personally advocate that, whether you're a singer or a rapper. So for rappers, for example, whether it's drill music, rap, or grime, it comes down to the same thing. I think I can give you guys. Can you put the guys back on?
What? Which one?
No, I just want to see everyone. So I can kind of give you guys a bit of anecdote, right? So we record. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with a guy called Big Nasty, but he's a very good friend of ours, and we record him every time, right? I'll give you guys a little story. So every time we record him, he does plenty of stacks. So he has his main, and then he wants to do ad libs. He wants to do BVs. He wants to stack. He wants to do stabs, right? Every time we finish recording with him and he goes home, do you guys know what we do? We just mute it. We just mute everything else. And he doesn't know any different. He doesn't know any different because we treat it and we make it sound full. So that's one thing I would say, especially with urban music, because there's a lot going on in terms of the bass, in terms of the 808, and so on and so forth. I would advocate that you try to keep your backings and your stabs to a minimal. It comes in handy, basically. Or else, if you record with us, chances are we're probably gonna mute it once you leave anyway. So that'll be an advice on that. So we're gonna get into the production side of things now. If there's any more technical questions on recordings and plugins that we use, if there's any more, let's have them now, or we can get into the actual production of the track and speak about the instrumentation. Cool. Antonio, we good?
Yeah, if everyone's happy technically, then yeah, you guys move on, man. And like I said, we'll have a bit of time at the end to ask some questions as well. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
especially one thing that Teddy said as well is like, even if you do all these in terms of stacks and stuff like that, you don't really have to, because nowadays there's VSTs that will make it bigger. But like, there's so many in waves that I used to use and I use between like some projects that are really good. Like for example, the double R. Like there's like so much things in terms of stereo imaging, so that makes it work to make
can you show them? Can you show them one of them?
Yeah. So 1 second. So there'll be one of these. Now this is it kind of sends your vocals like wide. It gives you a wide sort of sound to your vocals. You can make it sound bigger if you wanted to. There's also the double R that you can use on choruses if you want. Doublers, so they're quite good as well. Like these sort of VSTs are really good when it comes to making a vocal sound big. Whereas the main one that I use usually is the center. So the center is this VST here. So this actually is really good, like to make a vocal sound wide. So it sounds wide in the mix, and also like to keep it intact. I always have to put like a compressor on there, so it just keeps it intact. So it's wide, but it's just tight in the mix. That's what I usually have to do. So like that's another tip that you could do to make it sound big but intact at the same time. Yeah.
So that would be our advice when it comes to your vocals. The Americans use it a lot. They only do one track. Sometimes, a lot of the times, that's why they sound clean. Chris has asked, we showed them that. Chris has asked, is there any reason why you're not using Logic's own plugins?
It's just Logic's own plugins are really actually quite good, but it's just Waves has a variety of things that you could use, because obviously like Waves has got a ton of VSTs that you can use that make it sound much better. But like in terms of Waves plugin, I do use some, like for example the Space Designer, some of the EQs, the basic EQ from Waves, from Logic. Sometimes they're really good, so I just use them as well, just to roll off some ends, and that's it really. But in terms of to better a mix, I don't think some VSTs would be good, but it's always good to use a variety just in between it. So some mix and match basically. So it'll be some of the Logics, some of Waves, and some other ones that you want to use basically. So yeah.
Cool. Simon, we'll get to your question as we get into the production aspects of it all. So don't worry, I haven't forgotten. So if we get into the instrumentation, we kind of wanted to chat about how the track came about. I think one of the very first things we used for this instrumental was a sample. So kind of touching on samples as well. When it comes to us, it's 50-50, right? So some of the stuff that we do don't contain any samples whatsoever. We just kind of come up with it, and others might do. So with this particular track, we did use a sample, I believe. So we're going to mute it and kind of show you basically what the sample was. Hopefully you guys can hear it. So off the back of that, we then, I believe, came in with the intro. We're just going to focus just on the intro part of it and kind of show you some of the instrumentation we've added on it. So we've got this little drum machine marching thing going on in the background to kind of like get you going, right? So there's this instrument playing in the background. I don't know if it's a piccolo or a flute. We've got this instrument going in the background, and we didn't want to use claps. So we use this little marching thing that kind of gets your head going and your head nodding and gets you into the mood for it. Okay. And then you've just got some basic hi-hats coming in. All right, cool. So far we've got almost like a drum machine coming in, and the hi-hats, and obviously the sample that we're using. One thing we're very big on are either risers, faders, downers, fills, drum rolls, fills, anything. So we love to section our songs. We love to section each part, right? So from hearing it, you would know that, okay, this is the intro and this is the verse. So one of the things that we do when we're trying to separate both so that you're aware of it is always to use a fill on a lot of the stuff that we have. So in this particular one, I believe it is a drum roll. If you can solo it and play it to show them. That's the box as well. Yeah, play those as well. So in the background as well, we've that's another thing that we're big fan of, and I would personally advocate. Sometimes you might feel as if the beat that you're making doesn't sound full.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not because it doesn't sound full. You don't need to add extra piano. You don't need to add an extra melody and so on. It's just little bits and bobs that your ears pick out. So you can hear those ATL Atlanta type of what sound in the background. You can hear that little what, and the A. They all add to it. They all add to the feel of the track. They all add to the vibe.
Yeah.
So that's one advice I would say. Sometimes when you, especially for people that play instruments, right? I don't know how many of you guys do play instruments in here, but if you do, one thing I personally found is that we tend to overcomplicate stuff. We tend to add a lot more. I find it a lot with people that play piano, for example. Sometimes a simple chords is enough, right? But we get into it, we want to add more, and I feel like if you strip it back a little bit and then maybe just add some sounds, some feels, just create a vibe beyond the track, it works better that way than filling it in with more instruments, especially when you're just doing the intro part. The intro part is literally that. It's just an introduction to your track. You don't have to overdo it. So that would definitely AO break. With this. So yeah, again, drums are very simple. We don't overcomplicate things. We don't tend to do anyway. We keep our drums simple. And one of the reasons behind it, and I'm sure you guys, especially the younger guys that do drill beats and so on, you would know that every 8 or every 16, people love to change stuff. People love to add stuff and so on. But one very good trick for the radio and for music in general is to kind of keep it a little bit old school. Yeah. What our predecessors used to do in the 60s, the 50s, the 80s. Once you find a loop, once you find a pattern, go with it. Music is all about repetition. Like, the more people hear it, the more it's in their head, the more they'll nod to it. If you have to change every 8 and every new section, it kind of throws the listener off. You want them almost in a hypnotic stage, so you want that to be continuous. You want that to be constantly going. So
I think with this record, yeah, that was the aim, really. To be fair, like, just to have that same sort of constant nod, vibe. That's it. Nothing else apart from that. But I see what you're saying in terms of that, because there's a lot of producers sometimes that get carried away and trying to change certain things, but that shouldn't even be the case. If you basically visualize it and say, oh, okay, how would I make this song a radio song, or make this song a song that would be out for performing and stuff like that? Usually nothing really changes in those type of songs in terms of performance. Like say, for example, if you listen to EDM, it's pretty straightforward. Intro, long ass intro, boom, then a drop. That's it. Nothing else. And then you just repeat yourself again for like 3 minutes. So there again, it's just like that. But in terms of that, obviously there's other genres that you have to change or whatever, like some pop music you have to change.
But yeah, I mean, unless it's the bridge, the idea is you want to keep your listener engaged by not trying to get them to guess too much where the music is going. You kind of want it to keep it going. You want people to nod. You want people to keep vibing to it. So the simpler it is, the better. We're gonna get into the breakdown of 808s. I know a lot of people use 808s in in the beat making, whether it's R&B, whether it's hip hop, whether it's drill, or even if it's hardcore. So even if it's your kicks, for example, Tank, what do you add to your kicks?
Right, with a kick, exactly. With some obviously this beat was originally made on FL Studios. I don't have the project file, but what I've done was I've had it mixed in FL Studios to bring it here. So my job was a lot easier when I was working on here. Basically, I didn't really have to do much to the beat on here, but on the FL Studio project, I actually had to. So in terms of a kick, I would originally have, you got to make sure you have a good sound pack of kicks, basically. With the kicks that we actually use, they're quite meaty already, so we don't really have to do much. But in terms of that, for it to be sitting in nice with an 808 bass or any bass, I sidechain it. So I'll use a bus to then compress it out, to then sidechain the bass within the thing. Or sometimes I'll just use the C6 sidechain, basically. So what would happen is, for example, I don't have it on here in terms of sidechaining the beat, but usually I would sidechain using this. So for example, if on my channel there's a kick here and the bass is on the next side, I'll then select what channel is the bass on, to then also cut out frequencies and sidechain certain things. Like say for example, this is my kick channel, which is here. Wait 1 minute. Yeah, that's the kick. Also, yeah, another trick is in a book as well. I use a gate on a kick just so it doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't shake it doesn't clash with the bass a lot. So that's another thing. That's another way of sidechaining it, basically. So that's another way. But this way as well is also good, which is the C6, which is really good. Then I'll then send it to the bass. I keep having to scroll past the bass and stuff. All right. Yeah.
I actually got a question as well.
Yeah, go.
So what kind of advice would you give to people in terms of mixing the drum pattern, for example? Would you put the kicks in a separate track channel, then the snares in a different track channel, and so on and so forth? Or do you like to mix the whole drum pattern as one? Or would you prefer if people separated it?
It depends on the record, but ideally it would have to have more control. It's always stem mix. Stem mixing is the best, to be fair, because you have control of everything. So I would say, like separately.
Yeah.
Like,
so basically, treat your drum pattern just like you would treat your vocals.
Yeah.
Each one of them would have to have their own track. Bounce it as a stem, so you have it, which is pretty much what we've done here with this project. Everything is obviously a stem, and each instrument has its own track. So for us, the drum patterns is also an instrument. So the hi-hat is an instrument, the kicks is an instrument, the snare is an instrument, and it deserves its own channel, and it deserves its own treatment, really.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an advice that we'll give to people.
So yeah, in terms of just sidechaining, I think the sidechain, how it works, there's different ways that you can do it. You can even sidechain a vocal, which sometimes I do when it gets to like, when there's so much instruments to deal with, like you just have to sidechain some of it just to make sure the vocal has room and all the instruments have room as well. Like, so, but the best sidechain one I'll recommend is this. That will give you a lot of good sidechaining on this and give you a lot of room to play with. in terms of your low ends, all the frequencies you can sidechain basically in terms of that. Like the low end, I usually sidechain the low end, the mids, and some of the tops as well. But like it just varies on what you're trying to achieve in terms of your mix, basically. But in this particular record, I didn't have to use that. But apart from that, but it's just good to work with, like in terms of that. But also in terms of mixing and mastering, like that's another thing as well. Some people usually do master a full track by itself, but what we tend to do is actually bounce the track out as an instrumental and then bounce the vocal separately.
Solo it, yeah.
So that way, when the masterer gets it, basically, they've got more control to make it sound bigger than it is. Because if you sometimes try to bounce it as a whole full track and get it mastered, you'll find yourself thinking, okay, that don't sound right, I need to go back to it. Whereas if you send the acapella and the instrumental by itself
separately,
then you don't have to beat yourself up to having to go back into the mix. Whereas the masterer can do that. You can tell the master to take off certain low ends and certain stuff like that to it. So that's another trick as well. So
that would be a very good advice. If anyone else is mixing or mastering your track, send them the instrumental separately, send them the acapella separately, so they have more control, you have more control, and you guys can go back and forth discussing what to do with the track. It just makes more sense that way. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna play you guys the last minute of the track as a whole, minus the vocals, and then we're now going to get into the, I guess, the aspects of A&Ring the track, and talking about the artist, how we get the artist to be on the track, how we choose a track to be part of an album, and all that aspect. So we'll probably play the last minute of the track so you guys can hear any other instruments that come in there. There is a guitar that comes in there roughly for a few seconds, but it's worth to have a listen, and then we'll get into the other aspects of making a track. All right, cool. So you guys heard it. It has, again, different sections. Main sounds different from the chorus in terms of stripping, taking away, you know, to kind of differentiate what's a verse, what's a chorus. That's definitely an advice. Don't fill up too much on your verses. We want to hear people's verses. We want to hear the singer. We want to hear the rapper. So try and strip away some elements of the track and use it as a surprise factor. You know, if you take out the bass for the first 8 and bring it back later, it makes the track feel fresh. It makes the track feel new. And you know, there's so many tricks. But you have to remember, sometimes a tune, the very first 30 seconds of it, that's pretty much the whole track. Yeah. So now, how do we differentiate that for 3 minutes? That's where adding sounds, taking sounds away, bringing back sounds, reverbing sounds, reversing sounds, every single aspect, every single thing that you can do to just keep that momentum going I guess that's the part where you're a genius, right? That's the part where you make it sound your own thing.
Even like little gaps in a song, like say if someone says something that's like great or whatever, you give it
a little bit of a
gap,
breather,
or just filter in certain parts of the song and stuff like that. But yeah, I've seen.
Cool. So Aaron said, at what point do you know that the track is finished and ready for mastering? I don't think the track is ever finished. I think it's at the point where we decide and say, all right, enough is enough now. Otherwise, you can have a beat and you won't release it for years to come. So fun fact about this track, this track was released in 2020, but we started making this beat from 2018, late 2018. 2 studios ago, we had a different studio before that. So that's how long it took, right? So, you know, like Aaron says, that's his problem. He never knows when to stop. It's not, don't worry, you're not the only one. No one ever knows when to stop. But sometimes you just have to stop.
Like, for example, even the songs that are out now, when I listen back, I'm like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that better. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't stop at all, like at all. I know what you're saying, Aaron.
So Nick said, do you program all your beats from scratch or do you ever use loops? Nick, unless you missed it, the flute in this is actually a loop. In this particular beat, everything else around it is obviously done by us. So it depends on the track. You might hear a particular loop. And I guess that's where your genius comes in. You might be at home, hear an advert on TV and then go, ooh, I like that sound. You go on YouTube, bounce it, take it, make a beat out of it. You might be walking down the shopping center and hear something or whatever. So, you know, you don't necessarily always think I need to use a loop, but you might hear something that you like out there, you know, I don't know, playing a computer game or whatever, you hear it and then you want to use it. So that's pretty much how it goes.
So it varies. It's a bit of both. Like, do you know what I mean? But mainly, obviously, it's like whatever you hear makes you want to get up and make a beat. Then you can just go and do that. But we're not against using loops or starting from scratch, because I know there's a camp of producers that are like, oh, I just like to do everything from scratch. So
Nick's saying it means that the drums mainly. I think the drums are always from scratch.
From scratch.
We don't use any loops unless
fills are loops.
Yeah, unless it's like fills. Yeah, we'll use fills. But in terms of like the actual drum pattern, no, because it's a feeling, right? It's the vibe. Like you want to nod your head. You want to put the kick where you want to put the kick. You want to take off the snare where you want to take off the snare. And with a loop, sometimes it's a bit hard. Yes, you can cut it and so on, but then just make it yourself. If your vibe's into it, it's your track, right? You might as well make it. So we're gonna come back on and kind of talk to you now about the A&R side of the track. We're gonna put Logic on pause for a second. And kind of talk to you about the track itself. So as I mentioned, participants, I think. As I mentioned, we started this track at the back end of 2018. We are very hands-on in a lot of the stuff that we do. So the chorus was written by us. We actually wrote the chorus for it. We actually came up with the subject matter. The track is called 500 Likes. It's a, I guess, satire or sarcastic way of looking at Instagram nowadays, and people tend to keep telling others, I'm not going to put this song out unless I get 500 likes, unless I get 1,000 likes or 1,000 comments or so on. So it's kind of a satiristic look at that, and we're just being sarcastic about the term 500 likes. So we wrote the chorus, we came up with the idea, and then we were able to convey that to the artists. We actually had different artists in mind for the track.
We've had a lot, to be fair.
So when writing an album or when doing an album, we kind of section each instrumental. We feel as if, it might be down here, we feel as if listening to an instrument, you kind of have a picture of who you think might be best on that particular track. And we tend to have, tryouts. So a lot of people always ask us, how do you get this person on this track? How do you get that person on this track? It's as simple as Instagram. We go on Instagram, right?
Network.
And we network. That's the other aspect that I guess, if you have another one of these sessions with someone else, they might not talk to you guys about, but networking is extremely important. Believe me, believe Tank.
Yeah.
You can make however many beats you want. If you don't share them out to the world, if you don't hit people up, if you don't tell people you're a singer, you're a rapper, you make beats, you have tracks, they're never gonna come out. They're never gonna come out. So the way we do an album, we select a bunch of tracks. We have a board, and in our head, we kind of imagine who we want to hear on that track, right? And then we have a list of people that we work our way down the list. So we have the A list that we want, then we have the B list, the C list, and then we work our way down depending on some people. Some people might be busy. Some people might already have another project that they're doing and therefore they can't work with us. Or some people might be in a label situation and are not allowed to work outside their own album and so on. And some people might just not be interested. It is what it is. It's life. You try, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you just have to have a contingency plan on the side to make sure you have other people involved in it. So again, we write our own chorus. So when we approach the artist for it, we had kind of sung it ourselves already. We had a demo version of it. So we played it to them. We played it to Lazy, who was on the chorus, and he was happy to do it, and he redone it. How we got Koji Radical on it, very, very funny story. We had to go through so many loops because he's a signed artist, and we've had to speak to the A&R team. We've had to speak to
management.
I can't really say what label it is, but whatever. We had to have tons and tons of emails going back and forth. At one point, they've asked us to pay for the verse. Just quick cap. We didn't have to pay in the end, so it was all good. But yeah, sometimes it comes across like that. We've had to give them a date on which we had to release the track, make sure it matches their date, make sure that they approve the video. We've had to give them an idea of the actual video. What's the screenplay? What are the artists gonna wear? Where it's gonna go? Are we treating it as a single, or is it just a filler track on the album? What's the budget for the album? So on and so forth. So we've built over the years. We've built relationships with a lot of people. Some people do it for free because they are friends. Some people like us, and so they do stuff for us. And others probably do like us, but they can't work with us because they are in a situation, and therefore it's understandable. So that's one of my advice I was going to give you guys with your music, with your singing, with your rapping, with your beats. Don't take it personal if someone doesn't respond to you. If I were to show you our inbox, it doesn't matter whether we've got a blue tick, whether we've charted or not. No one cares. You still have to go out there and work. You still have to make phone calls. You still have to speak to managers that may not respond back to you straight away, that may not come back to you. It's life. Don't take it personal. Because then when you're big, you can do that to them as well. No, I'm joking. But it's life. That's how it goes, right? If we get Beyonce to sing on our track, we all know it's not going to happen. Right now, today, none of us can get Beyonce today. But tomorrow, one of us or two of us can. It's just, you have to keep trying, and you have to keep networking. And sometimes some people do aim way too high. Maybe if you work your way through the artists, you get to the top tier. So Aaron's asking, do most artists demand payment to collaborate? The answer is no. Most artists tend to want to do it for free. Sometimes it's the label that they're with, that's the issue, or it's the manager that they're with, that's the issue. Some of the people that were on our project did it for free. Some of the people that went on our project unfortunately couldn't do it, even though they told us, I wish I was on it, but I can't do it because this, that. So that is my advice on that. And if you have a track in mind, if you if you sung it yourself, or you're doing it, and this, I'm gonna go back to the singers really quick. This is one advice for the singers, right? Sometimes I know we all want to make it, but if you're a singer and you're good at writing, you can also concentrate on writing for other people. It doesn't make you less. That could be your way in. Look at people like Neo, Kerry Hilson, you know, Party
so
Next Door. Like, there's so many artists that started writing for other people and ended up doing their own thing, like your Emily Sundays and so on. So that is a way in. It's never, it's, you know, if you get a no for you as a singer, it doesn't mean that's the end of the world for you. There are ways in, and maybe if you write a massive hit, eventually people want to hear you as a singer as well. So kind of take that into consideration.
Yeah, there's like, obviously, even in terms of that writing, that comes into like publishing and stuff like that. So a lot of it comes with, like, if you say, for example, today you write a song, gets big, you definitely get someone to contact you and say, oh yeah, we want to sign you as a publishers. We'll send you out to sessions. You can write for so on and so forth, like Ed Sheeran, for example, or whatever artist they've got on their roster that they want to pretty much work on and get them to the next level. They probably might call you in and just say, oh, do you want to write for that person? You know what I mean? So like these little opportunities, like getting a publishing deal or writing for someone, writing a song is one. Or even like for producers, for example, making a beat for an advert, getting syncs. You don't necessarily have to have what would you call it, a hit to get those sort of things. There's other avenues like syncs, for example, adverts and stuff like that you can sign up to, and they can put all your instrumentals on that database, and then they'll just probably shout you if your instrumental matches one of the adverts or anything like that. So there's other avenues, not just producing like hits, singles and stuff like that. There's also other avenues like making advert songs and scoring, movie scoring. Do you know what I mean? Like,
plenty of things.
There's plenty of things you could do rather than just trying to make the next best song.
And before we get into questions, I see Antix asked a question, but I was gonna say, guys, as well, don't underestimate the power of free. It's okay to give out music for free. It's okay to write a hook for someone for free. If you want to get paid for everything, you have to accept you need to start somewhere. So we've given out so many free stuff to artists, and just in return just asked for a certain percentage of the publishing, knowing fully well we could have charged X amount of money, and you know, so just don't underestimate free. Sometimes you can't charge for everything. You know, you have to give some to get some back. So if you believe in karma and all of that, you know, you give, you get back. So take that into consideration too. So Antix asks, how do you get into songwriting, getting songs to other artists? Again, same thing, networking, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud. I was gonna say MySpace, but you guys are probably too young for that. But it's just that. It's just networking. So before we got our big break, one of the first things we used to do was to go on people's pages, on their Twitter page or their Instagram page, and we used to take their email addresses. And we used to email them. Because there's no point tweeting someone, right, or DMing someone. They're not gonna respond. Look on the bio. There's always an email. Email the manager. Email the track. You know, and ideally, and that's what the guys. Like, my advice is, don't do the yo bro. Here's a tune. Like, write an email. Write a concise email. Not necessarily about your life, but just hi, with so and so. I'm a music producer. We thought of you. Here's a few tracks. Let us know if you like it. You know, if you start with the whole yo bro, here's 5 tunes. Let me know. Let you know what, like, you know what I'm saying? They might not respond back to you. So take it serious, and they'll take you serious as well. But there you go. That's one way. Look for email addresses. Antonio, I think we're kind of ready for questions. If anyone had, we've got the floor open for any questions.
Yeah, cool. I think you kind of loosely answered, but I think Billy, I'm not sure if you answered Billy's question here. How did you get your name off the ground?
Oh,
do some promo or speak to
Oh
someone.
yeah. Oh boy. So just that's a bit of a throwback. So we come from an era where everything was about CDs. We grew up into, I guess at the time it was pretty much grime music. So it was all about burning your CD of instruments, standing outside raves or events or whatever, and then kind of handing them out to DJs and so on. And the CDs had our numbers on it. Then we just started producing for people in our area. So we started off at my house. I remember we had like a little cupboard that we used as a booth, and a guy that I used to play basketball with, like people, like for example, people know him as Big Tobes, but I used to know him as Toby. I used to play basketball with. I grew up with him. I mean, we grew up with him. We used to just record him. And I mentioned Big Nasty, for example. We knew him all the way back in 2012. Just when other people wouldn't want to do music with us, we just found one person. We stuck with that person, and then other people wanted to hear it. And then we started sending music to radio station. KFM used to have a DJ called Logan Sama, and he used to do I think every Friday or every weekend or whatever, every Monday, and we just used to send instrumental that they will play. Make sure you have your tag as well. I think that's how we got recognized, through our tag. You know, that's the little whatever intro that you put on every track that you have, and that's kind of how it started. And after that, when Twitter existed, we just spammed everyone. We just spammed people. Like, we just emailed everyone. Literally emailed everyone. And we got to a period where we were doing a thing called Trackers Friday, which was basically every Friday we'd go on Bandcamp and put out 3 instrumentals. We put out 3 instrumentals and 1 vocal track for free that people could download. That's how we kind of built our fan base. So every Friday, people will wait for this thing called Trackers Friday, and they'll just have it, and it was free. And then, you know, and then after that, every single artist that we knew wanted to be part of Trackers Friday, wanted to jump on it, and do something with it, you know. And then off the back of that, we just started gathering a following, and then we were putting out instrumental tunes again on iTunes when that came about, and that's how we got there. And then the other aspects of it as well, we were still doing, although that was grime, we were still doing songs with singers. We were doing other genres of music. We didn't stick to one. We were still doing rap. We were still doing R&B, and we were dealing with people even in America, like that didn't know who we were and so on. And then once we had our big break, then people start calling you. It's the other way around now. They start chasing you for songs. They want to be your managers. They want to be your publisher. They want to dress you. They want to give you free clothes and so on and so forth. But you have to do the first part yourself. Billy said, what song was for Stormzy did you produce? We produced a track called Not That Deep, and we produced a track called Standard for Stormzy. Aaron said, a bit of a personal question. Are you both able to make a full-time living from music, or do you have other jobs? So when we started, even after we had our first top 10, so we had the top 20 and we had the top 10, we were still both working. Because remember, you still have to feed the machine, right? You still have to pay for your equipment. You still have to pay for your laptop. So like back then, we were still working. So I was, we were going to events. We were going on radio right after leaving our 9 to 5. Like literally, I was wearing shoes, jump in the car, take my shoes off, put my trainers on, go on radio, go to MTV, go to Nike, go to Beats by Dre, go to YouTube and have meetings and so on. So that doesn't stop, because if you don't have any money to feed your passion, then I don't know how you're going to do it, right? So all these VSTs and stuff that we're showing you guys, you have to pay for it. Someone's going to have to pay for it. So I don't know how else you're going to do it. Well, thank God that we don't have to do it. But yeah, just to let you know, when we were in the charts we were still working. So anyone that tells you not to work, that's not my advice. You should work. And someone asked, how long did it take you? How long does it take you to make your first beat? What do you think?
It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10, it could be an hour, it could be whatever. But the only thing is with our workflow, it's an organized mess. So Ted will come up with an idea, I'll then add some stuff to it, then off to the next one. So by the time an hour goes by, there's about 10 ideas, 10 beats or 20 beats. It could be any sort of time given. It depends on, like, for example, it depends on a day as well. Say on a day you want to make, I want to make something like what I've heard of like a Drake song or something like that, or a specific sound. That could take you an hour or two or whatever. But in general, by default, it's always 5 minutes or 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes for our first beats or first ideas or whatever.
And and an advice on, and that this is for the producers, an advice on your craft. Me personally, I don't care if you do drill, rap, drum and bass, try to do different stuff as well. Like pick a day out of the week and try to do different styles of music that you don't necessarily listen to, because you might find yourself regurgitating a lot of the same things that you hear on radio, and you might end up doing it. Try to limit as well your ears. Try and cleanse your ears in terms of who you listen to and how much radio you take in as well.
That's very important.
Because sometimes too much radio and then you feel like your sound needs to sound like that in order for it to be played on radio. So do take time out, sometimes to just not want to hear other people's music. Just like your music first, and then we'll worry about everyone else, because otherwise you end up chasing. Idris said, you've spoken about commercial success, top 10, top 20. How do you remain hungry to the craft, having achieved what you already have? Well, that one's an easy one, because so I'll just give you a quick background. So when we did our first album in 2017, so the day our album came out, so I'll give you figures, just for the first album, I'll give you figures. We went in, we didn't have a manager when we went in to Warner and asked for a deal for our first album. It was really gutsy. Like, we got on the train, we went there, we told them, this is what we've done, this is the catalog that we have, we're trying to do our album, how much can we get for it? They told us a figure, and we were pleased with that. It was a very good figure, like, because you didn't expect that, right? Really, and then we've done it. But one thing I was going to say is that it disappeared really quick, because once you have billboards, right? You have the billboards, you have publishing, you have PR, you have radio, you have the music videos you have to shoot, you have everything else. Like, then you realize, oh, wow, it's not as much as I thought it was, and it was a decent number. It wasn't like a rubbish number. But my thing is, you realize that you want to take your craft to another level. So for this album that we released 4 months ago, it was the same thing. One of our, I'll give you an example. One of our videos cost us £1,000. Another video cost us 10 grand, right? Just because that's what we wanted to do. That's the kind of visuals we wanted to put out. And it could be something similar as just renting a car, or just getting a shot from a particular crane angle, and the crane alone or the camera quality is going to cost you £4,000 just for 5 seconds in your video. So to answer your question is, once you finish an album, the next thing you do is you shake hands, you take a week off, and then you go, let's go again. What's next? That's it. There is no, like, I don't think the hunger goes away. You just think, I want to do better, I want to be bigger. So if your aim is to be just like Kanye West, or to be, I don't know, like Beyonce or whatever, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And you find that you'd enjoy your career a lot more once the interviews are stopped, once the free press, the free clothes, and the free lifestyle, and all of that aspect of it, the champagne stops. That's when you enjoy it even more, because this other stuff does take you away from your music. Like that's one thing people don't realize. It does take you away from your music. After a while, it's kind of like you've been to every single party that this particular person has put together, and you're like, I just want to get back to the studio and I just want to make music and I just want to vibe again. So it's fun, but eventually you just want to make music. So it doesn't stop. You just want to do bigger.
Yeah, it's true. Especially what it says, like all these little steps. Me thinking back, like from 2014 till now, every little break that we've had, it's always has been a week off, and it's like, okay, what we doing next?
Yeah.
What we doing next? What's next? We've done that now. What's next? So the more we kept doing that, it's just opened more doors for us. Like, so I think that's the only way you're gonna stay hungry. If you just think, what is next? What is next? Like, what can I do better? Like, then that's it. There's always room for improvement.
I'll give you guys another example. So we had, this is I think our 4th studio that we're in. It's small, it's cozy. We had a studio, right, with 2 stories. We had an upstairs and a downstairs. We had studio downstairs, we had studio upstairs. We had people coming in and out. In our previous studio, Skepta recorded Shut Down, and That's Not Me, or one of those 2 in our studio. And at the same time, it means you have to cater for 100 people. You have people sleeping in your studio. You have music going off. You have people eating. You have vibes and vibes and vibes and vibes. And when we done all of that, we then decided that we wanted to downsize because we wanted to get back to just being in our studio making beats, because that's what we are. That's what we do. We're music producers. Like, that lifestyle is for other people. So if you concentrate on your craft and you realize that you've had your fun and you just want to make music, then things become a lot more easier. Aaron's asked, as a duo, how do you work through creative differences?
It's an organized mess.
Yeah, you argue through it. You argue through it
all the time. But it's that's the beauty of it, to be fair. Like, say for example, Teddy might not like the instrumental, or something's missing. And I'll be like, yeah, it's all right. Then I said, let me try something else. Yeah. And we just, obviously, after a while, we just come to the middle ground and say,
And sometimes you have to accept as well the other person's preference. I might say, I reckon the outro should be a little bit longer. We might need to take the beat off here. And he might say, no, I think we need to leave it that way because we've already done that on the other track, and so on and so forth. And sometimes you just go, you know what, you were right. Or even choosing what video we're going to shoot next, right? That could be an argument in itself, you know, or choosing the path that you're trying to take, or not trying to sound too commercial, or trying to stay true to the underground, or whatever it is, because there is a fine balance, right? At the same time, you love your craft and you're trying to do what you want to do, but at the same time, you have to pay bills. So there is a hint of you may have to be a little bit more commercial than you want to be. And at the same time, you may say, no, forget that. I want my identity and I want to do the things that I love. So you may not want to. But then when there's 2 of you, you have to discuss that.
How did you meet and how did you know?
And Tick said, how did you meet and how do you know you could work creatively together? Because sometimes I find it hard to connect with other creatives and make magic. It's tough. It's vibing. So I'm from the Ivory Coast in West Africa. Tank's from the Ivory Coast in West Africa. We met in England at a time where it was all so solid and garage, and I didn't know what garage was. I didn't know what grime was. I just came here. I liked it. He came here. He liked it, and that's it. I was playing keyboard at church. He was making music on his PlayStation, and that's kind of how we got together. You just have to vibe, and that's it. I can't really answer that question because it's just connection, right? You said it yourself. It's just connecting.
Daily. Sometimes I think we've had a few sessions with other producers, ourselves. Like, obviously, it's not worked. It hasn't worked.
All right, so that's actually that's a good point. I was going to say. So sometimes our managers, when we had managers, would send us to sessions with other artists or other producers, and none of them have seen the light of day. None of the sessions we've done with I can't name the producers, but none of them. We didn't make any music with them. It just didn't work. It's just what it is. You can't force it. It just didn't work. because they might not like what we're doing, we might not like what we're doing, but then that producer might make a song and I might hear it and I'll be like, "Right, this is really good." But then when we was in the session together, it didn't come across that. So it's life. It works or it doesn't work. So or you might have sessions with artists that songs might not see the light of day. Yeah. We've got a few songs,
so many
that would never be out. I think we have a track with I don't know if you guys are familiar with Game of Thrones. So one of the actors in there, whose artist name is Riley Ritchie. We have a song together that will probably never come out just because we couldn't agree on it.
I have a song with Chip.
We have a song with Chip that couldn't come out. We have a song with Getz we couldn't do the video for. We have a song with, I think you've done a session with Emily Sunday, and that never came out. It's life. Stuff comes out, stuff don't come out. You just keep it moving. That's all it is. Have you always wanted to produce, and how long did it take to get your feet off the ground? I use my student loan money to buy all my equipment. That's how we got here.
Pretty much.
That's it. Tank used his work money, his Tesco money,
Costa money,
his Costa money, and then that's how we bought our equipment.
Yeah.
I was going to university and I spent all my student loan money on my equipment until my sister had enough of me playing too much bass in my bedroom, and she said, "Go get your own studio." That's it. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
Do you ever sleep in the studio because you're passionate about your project? Tank does. He sleeps in the studio.
This is my house.
This is pretty much his house.
This is my house.
I can't admit it because I'm just waiting for my second child. So my sleeping in the studio days are kind of over. But like he's here. He lives here. And you have to go through that phase where you would only go home to shower, and then that's it. Like if you're hungry, you get to that stage where you don't eat, and you have to, like other people have to remind you, "Yo, you need to go and eat."
Yeah.
When you get to that stage, your breakthrough is there. Don't worry. If you get to that stage, trust me, it will happen because they can't deny it when you're doing so good.
If it's an obsession, that's it. There's no gatekeepers for you, bro. Nothing's gonna stop you if it feels like an obsession. You know what I mean? But like that's how you know how do you see these footballers making it because they're obsessed with what they do.
It's just like any other sport. It's the same thing.
Anything you see, there has to be some form.
Yeah, if you play football, it's an obsession, right? If you're British Patel, it's an obsession as well. If you're whoever, it's an obsession. Whatever you do is an obsession. But it has to get to that point. It has to get to that point where you only go home to shower and then you come back and you want to make more music and so on. Last bit, what's the best piece of advice you've got as creative? Mine is away from the creation of music, and it's more about social networking and linking up. So Tank is a bit of a hermit. He stays in the studio. I tend to be the PR guy, so I go outside and shake hands. So that's how we work. That's why we work. Yes, we do music. Yes, I lend my ear, but it works because I'm able to shake hands. I'm able to say that. That's why you guys see me talk the most and he talks less, because it works. That's our dynamic, right? So my advice would be network, email, talk. Once Corona's done, any event that's out there, if Converse is doing an event and this person's gonna rap at it, go and watch. If I don't know, there's something happening in Shoreditch, be there. If whatever, Nighttown is doing something, go there. This artist says meet here because I'm giving out free t-shirts, go there. If HMV is about to close, go there. Just go. Like, just do things, shake hands. I'm pretty sure HMV don't even exist anymore. But just do things. Go, speak, email, have conversations on the net. That would be my advice. What will be yours?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Network, but just to keep the fire burning, make sure the original thing is, obviously, if you're, whether if it's music or football or whatever, make sure you stay hungry. That's it. Like, that's the ground rule. Like, if you have that and it's an obsession, everything else will fall into place regardless. Do you know what I mean?
Aaron said, how did you feel when German Whip came out? That track was everywhere at one point. Was it overwhelming? Fun story about that track. Although he got to a number 13 in the chart, we weren't actually big fans of it at all.
Nah.
You find it. All right, here's a quick advice, right? The one song you think is the song that's going to break you tends to be not that song at all. It's always the other one you care less about.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to say it, but take care of all your songs like they're your babies.
Yeah.
The one that you bank on and you spend X amount in a video and PR and promotion sometimes doesn't even do those numbers. It's the one you don't care about. And that's a perfect example. We really didn't care about that track. It's okay. It's an okay track.
Fun fact, I was about to delete that song.
He was going to delete it of his Logic files. That's how, because it happens.
Yeah.
So it's just that. Antique said, "The sound's gone. Can everyone still hear us?"
Yeah, I can.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So so that's just an advice. Just bear that in mind. The one track that you think, this is the one, you might play it to an artist. And here's the other thing with artists, right? When you sit with them and you play them 10 tracks, it's the quickness at which they tell you next. It really hurts.
Yeah.
It really, really hurts. 10 seconds in and it go next. So just bear that in mind, right? You might play your best chorus and you're like, oh, this is the part, you hear my falsetto and he doesn't even want to hear it. And they tell you next. Don't take it to heart. It's life. Just make more songs.
That's it.
That's all there is to it, because you don't know which one's gonna make it. So if there isn't any more questions, I think Antonio, we're good on that side. If there's anything else.
No, brilliant. I think I think there's been a load of questions. Thanks very much, guys. They're asking how they can keep in touch with you guys.
So the Instagram is at HeavyTrackerz, or Twitter at the HeavyTrackerz. So we haven't posted since the year's begun, because we're working on a deluxe version of our album. And sometimes when people see you way too much, you become a commodity. So sometimes make yourself a bit rare and come back out with stuff. But you can follow us on Instagram. At some point we will post stuff once we have videos and promotion ready. People only come out once they have stuff to sell. So we will come out when we have stuff to sell. Until then, we're all enjoying COVID and
life.
Quarantine like everyone else, man.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. And I think I'll speak for everyone in the chat, thanking you. And obviously, you guys speaking about the business side of things as well. I think that's really important. Like you said, you can make as many beats as you want, but if you're not clued up on the business side of things, so that kind of links into what I wanted to kind of finish on in terms of community music and the Logic degree, music production and business foundation degree. Here is a link to some information about that. If you're thinking of going to uni, a lot of the stuff that these guys have covered in this chat, even if you were a bit baffled when they were talking about side chaining, all the kind of really, geeky music stuff, music production side of things, that's the sort of thing you will cover on the degree course, as well as a lot of the business stuff that Teddy was talking about. And actually, Teddy, the HeavyTrackerz actually come in and do a talk as well a lot of the time for the degree as well, so you'll be able to see these guys again. So I've just put the link in the chat there, so if you want to read up more about that degree course, all the information is there. But thank you again, guys. The next month we'll send you information about next month's one. We've got again Urban Dub, who's more of the drum and bass side of things. He'll be coming in, he'll be doing exactly the same thing, and you'll kind of have his take on it. Thank you very much, guys.
Right, guys.
Hopefully everyone enjoyed that, man.
Cheers, thanks.